Who could imagine that the Midwest would house one of the top 5 dishes of Mexican cuisine in the United States? Yes, Tulsa, in the heart of the Route 66, has had since the 50s the Rancho Grande restaurant, which on his menu has a dish called a Night Hawk. This meal is made of 2 cheese and onion enchiladas, smothered in a spicy chile con carne, sprinkled with melted jello cheese, and served by a little taco in a tortilla that melts in your mouth. According to Taco USA, How Mexican Food Conquered America, the latest book by Gustavo Arellano, editor of the OC Weekly newspaper and author of the syndicated Ask a Mexican column, this meal of Tex-Mex heritage is history on a plate. In a telephone interview, Arellano said that the meal is in the top 5, not only for his taste, but for his historical importance.
Hola Gustavo, how are you?
Bien, bien. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for your time. Hey Gustavo, before we start, I read some of the interview that they have asked you in the past, and then I was checking about the Orange County that you describe it as the land of the good Republicans go to die. So my very first question is,
That was actually what Ronald Reagan said about
yeah.
Orange County. When he came here in 1984, that's how he described Orange County, the place where all the good Republicans go to die.
Hey Gustavo, so do you think that bad Republicans choose to die in Tulsa, Oklahoma? What do you think?
No, bad Republicans. They're all the bad Republicans are in Orange County. I met some Republicans. I think I met some Republicans when I was in Tulsa. They were especially Latino Republicans out here in Orange County. I'd call them a bunch of vendidos. But in Tulsa, they seem to really be, they seem to be good in terms of like demanding rights for immigrants, for Mexicanos and all that. And that's not something our Republicans would do at all. So, yeah, all the good Republicans are in Tulsa. All the bad ones are here in Orange County.
Okay. Hey, Gustavo, now I want to start talking about this wonderful journey, Taco USA, how Mexican food conquered America. And also talking that you touch Tulsa, exactly in your page 249 when you talk about Rancho Grande. But before that, tell him about this journey that you did, talking about Taco USA. How was this? When it start? What was the best part that you enjoyed the most, besides, of course, eating?
Yeah, Taco USA was the idea for the book came in the fall of 2008. My book agent, he gave me the idea. He said, you did a book, or you do a column called Ask a Mexican. You love to write about food. Why don't you combine the best of both of those and write about the history of Mexican food in the United States? And at first I wasn't really interested because I thought, oh, I'm sure somebody's already done it. But then I started doing a little bit of research, and it turned out no one had actually done that book. And then it bothered me because Mexican food is so important to this country, and also just in terms of history, I think it's important for us to know the history of anything, especially something as important as Mexican food. So that's what made me decide to start writing the book. And the book itself, that was the fall of 2008. I started researching around 2009. So it took me about about a year and a half of research, and then about maybe 6 months of actual writing to be able to do Taco USA.
Good. Hey, Gustavo, and then in that journey, you talk about tamales, tacos, enchiladas, about Jesus, una tortilla, but also you talk about your favorite dishes, those Sonora dogs, those Mexican burgers that you can eat at Denver. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the book itself, it's all about the history of Mexican food in the United States, the many different types of platillos, dishes, and ingredients that Americans have fallen in love with. And it's really been everything from tacos to tortillas to chips to tequila to hot sauce, salsa, burritos, everything. It's all important to document that history. I found all that history, but I also know that people like to know, okay, so you're talking about all this food, like, well, where should I go eat some great Mexican food? So I decided to do a list of what I thought were the 5 best Mexican dishes in the United States, not just in how they tasted, but also the history behind these dishes. And for that, I was trying to look for places. Everyone knows there's great Mexican food in Los Angeles. There's great Mexican food in San Antonio and all these other places, but I wanted to introduce people to other places. Like, people might not expect where I live in Santana, California, to have good Mexican food, or Tucson. Okay, so they might have an idea of Mexican food in Tucson, but bacon wrapped hot dogs being Mexican, what? So I wanted to expose people to that as much of that as possible. So in that same fashion, then that's why I listed Tulsa, El Rancho Grande. I called it Nighthawk Special, the fifth best Mexican dish in the United States.
Yeah, and then you did that something wonderful, because sometimes actually, like, it's very very usual that everybody forget, like, the Midwest, like the heart of the nation. Everybody talk about the coast, the west, the east, and Texas is like an independent nation, but then you hit the target like in the middle, and you were actually also like in the heart of the famous Route 66 and fine Rancho Grande.
Yeah, that's, I mean, and I have to admit, I was one of those people who completely dismissed the Midwest. I'm native of Southern California. My parents are from Zacatecas, so I always assumed, okay, well, Mexicans only live in the Southwest, Texas, Nuevo Mexico, Arizona, California, and maybe some other, like maybe Chicago and some other places. I never expected for Mexicans to be living in Tulsa, and I never expected for there to be a long history of Mexicanos in Tulsa. Obviously not on the level as Southern California, but a good, proud, vibrant community. When Sara Martinez from the Tulsa Library, she invited me to go speak there, a couple of years ago, I did not expect to see such a vibrant community. And then, like, learning the history, like, wow, there was Mexicanos there since the 1900s. There were tamaleros there since the 1920s. Then you have El Rancho Grande, which, I had never heard of, but in doing the research, it still exists. It's one of the oldest, restaurants in Tulsa, period. And also, just if you think about the history, it was probably one of the first Mexican restaurants that a lot of Americans ever tasted, because as they were driving through Route 66 to California, they had to pass through Tulsa. And so I'm sure that, this new, this Mexican restaurant with fancy neon, it called to them. They're like, oh, what's this? What's this food that I've never heard of? What are these drinks? And in that sense, it really becomes, it's more than just a restaurant. It's more than just a restaurant in Tulsa. It's an ambassador for Mexican food, and that's something that very few restaurants in the United States can say.
Hey, Gustavo, and you also mentioned recently that if it's made by a Mexican, well, it's Mexican food. So,
Yeah.
so let's say if we go and to a Thai restaurant, Thai food, and then, well, if in the kitchen we have Mexicans, then it will be Mexican food?
It's Mexican food in its own way, in the sense that you have Mexicanos making it, so invariably Mexican cooks are going to put their own personal touches, and that's, I don't know about Tulsa, so I won't be able to talk about Tulsa, but I know that's what's happened here in Southern California. In Orange County, you have these teriyaki bowls. Teriyaki, of course, being made by Japanese, and as teriyaki bowls, kind of like Yoshinoya. So you had in the city of Santana, you had Mexicans making these teriyaki bowls, and then over the years, they've evolved into something completely different. The meat's less thick, it's more like carne asada. They put cebollitas in it instead of just scallions, grilled. And then they start offering tapatio alongside the teriyaki sauce, and then horchatas to be able to, to refresh yourself after eating it. So now all of a sudden you have Japanese food that in the course of 20 years has become, a Japanese-Mexican hybrid, which is really mostly eaten by Mexicans. So it sounds kind of implausible if we're saying, like, well, if a Mexican's making my sushi, how is it Mexican food? But if it's not already, it will. In fact, right across the street from my work is a Japanese place, and they now have what they call sushi burritos, which are super, super good.
Good. And then one of the things, Gustavo, that I really like about your book, Taco USA, is that you are also actually embracing the food that we have here. This is not something like very pure. We're not going to be talking about chiles en nogada, etc. We're talking about the food that we find here, and also food, let's say, as you always mention, like what gabachos think and like about Mexican food, right?
Yeah. No, there's, in the book, I talk about this debate, between quote unquote authentic Mexican food, real Mexican food, and then and then what other people say, fake Mexican food. And excuse me. Okay, and what I eventually conclude is that it's a fake argument. It's a false argument. There is no such thing as real Mexican food. It's all real. All of it's real, whether it's made by Americanos or Mexicans, whether it's made in Oaxaca or in Tulsa. It's all real Mexican food. If people consider it to be Mexican food, it's Mexican food. Who are we to say what's authentic and what's not? None of us are. In Mexico, some people think chapulines are disgusting, that they're not real Mexican food. But for people from Oaxaca, that's a delicacy for them. That's a culinary treasure. Similarly, a lot of Americans don't think cactus, that you can't eat cactus, but a lot of us eat nopales. That is Mexican food. And so similarly, when it came to El Rancho Grande, to the history of it, the longtime owner of it was Ruby Rodriguez. She was Mexican. She was born in Mexico. She was making Mexican platillos, with a cook from Texas who was also Mexican. Who on earth would dare call that not real Mexican food? And the sad thing is, a lot of people would say that, and it's silly. It's a silly argument. It's an absolutely silly argument. Own right.
Yeah. And Gustavo, and tell me about two songs, two groups that you have in your iPod that you have to play it over and over again.
Oh my God, with Banda El Recodo, the Don Cruz Lizárraga, the classics of Banda Sinaloense. That's one for sure. And then the other one, the Beatles. You have the combination. If you want another Latin group, another Latin group, I would say like. The person who I'm really into right now is Hector Lavoe, or Lavoe, I don't know how you pronounce it, but the great salsero from Puerto Rico who used to sing alongside Willie Colon and the Fania All-Stars. That's the great thing about being a Latino, is that we can make the easy transition, between Latin culture and American culture. Yeah, I blast Beatles as much as I blast Vicente Fernandez. To me, they're both equally amazing. I could listen to all types of music, and it makes perfect sense to me. Whereas with Americans, like a lot of times, they won't listen to international music because for them, it's like, I can't understand the lyrics. Yeah. I don't care. If you can't understand the lyrics, at least you can appreciate the music.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, and my final question, Gustavo, how you do it? You are the editor of the AC Weekly that has a weekly circulation with your syndicated column of over 2 million. And more than 39 newspapers. How you do it? Do you sleep and now promoting the book? How you manage to do all that?
I sleep. I sleep too much, actually. I should sleep less because I have so much stuff to do. But the way I see it is, if I didn't like doing it, all these things, I wouldn't do it. And the fact is, I love doing it. I love writing my Ask a Mexican column because it's an important column to me to be able to fight racists. I love doing Taco USA. It was a lot of work, but being able to write about the history of Mexican food in this country, it was great. I love to be the editor of the OC Weekly because Orange County is where I'm from, and I like to, I like to be able to participate in a paper that I have a lot of respect and admiration for. It's all wonderful things. It's not a job for me. It's a passion. Everything that I do, there is no stress. There is no stress associated with it. It's all a passion for me.
Good. Hey, Gustavo, you have been great, and let's remember our readers and listeners to check Taco USA, how Mexican food conquer America. Now, just a final message to your followers here in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
No, I want to thank Tulsa again for being so supportive. When I went out a couple of years ago, I'm going to try to go back. I don't know if I'll be able to go back this year, but for sure next year. There's a lot. It was great to meet everyone who does read the column. And more than anything, Tulsa, you could view me as your defender because the whole United States is angry at me. Tulsa, what does Tulsa know about Mexican food? They don't know anything. No, they're the ones who don't know anything. Tulsa, you know exactly who you are, and especially La Comunidad Latina, you know exactly what ustedes are about, and anything I could do to let the United States know that there is great things happening in Tulsa, that's what I'm here to do.
Great, Gustavo, and thank you for putting us on the map. We wish you the best.
Thank you so much, Juan. Take care.
Gracias, Gustavo.
Adios.
Bye.